Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke, and today's guest is Tamara Caulder Richardson. She is a multiple near-death and UFO experiencer, evidential medium known as the Southern Belle Medium, and ultra-dimensional channeler. Today we'll be talking about her near-death experiences, speaking to spirit people, and her experiences with Jesus. Tamara, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me, John.
You have a lot of experiences, a lot of intuitive experiences. First, how did it start?
Well, I think that it's always been a part of me, but then it was also triggered by my near-death experiences starting at a prenatal and then age 3, 4, 5, 10, and then my last one was 34.
What is the first near-death experience that you actually recall?
Well, I did recall that. I did a regression on that, and it came up, and I didn't know it was a thing. But in PMH's book, PMH Atwater's book, Forever Angel, she talks about it. But I just remember my mother was pregnant with me, and she was bleeding and going to have a miscarriage. And as spirit, I just watched it all and felt a lot of love for her, and was not almost born. I did not think of it as an NDE, but she said it was a form of an NDE. So I thought that was unusual. The one that would be to my cognition that as being here would be when I was 3. And that was the one where when I was 3 years old, I was playing hide and seek in this antebellum home that was my uncle, my mom's brother, had a daughter, and he was at his mother-in-law's, and we were playing hide and seek. And so I ran upstairs, and I'm bouncing around, squealing like kids do, and trying to find a place to hide. And under the dresser was a nail, and as I'm bouncing, the nail pierced my head to the skull. And I put my hand on my head, thinking that a water cup fell on my head, but it was blood. And then instantly, it was a little bit, and then it started coming out more. And then as soon as I looked at it, I passed out. And then I was above my body and saw the rest of everything else from above.
Okay. Once you saw yourself, you were floating up near the ceiling. What happened next?
So I'm kind of hovering around, looking around. I can see, again, I don't have eyes, but I can see. And my cousin runs upstairs, screams, gets the adults. What do we do? My mom comes up, says she'll be fine. But during this time, I'm seeing in the spirit world, it looks like to me, I perceived it as an angel. It was 9 to 10 feet tall, very glowy. It felt like a higher level being, and it was over my head, and I felt as though it was healing me. But then I was getting all the conversations in the room, and then the lady of the house went downstairs to call my grandmother to come get me, and because my mom was a young mother, and so her mother, and so I could hear that downstairs, and I could also see outside all at the same time. So when she did come, they took me to her friend that was a doctor, got me in. They said I had a contusion, but it literally had a hole in my head because it pierced through. So I literally had a hole in my head 2 years. I had to wait for it to grow back. It was like a soft spot, like a baby.
So you were able to see and hear what was going on in other rooms?
Yeah, as spirit. And just the same way that we have sensations, I didn't think it was odd not having eyes to see, but I could see everything. I could also see outside. I could feel temperature. I got feelings. It was just like feelings we have here, but it was out without a body. And so when I, came back, they had to put a watch over me because they were concerned about my head swelling. But at that point on, and it never has changed, I saw spirit people, and I saw them, and it really kind of sucked because I saw them in my room at night, and I was very confused by this. Who are these people? And they want to talk a lot.
Spirit people. Okay. So before this experience, were you able to see anything like that when you were a kid, 3, 4, 5 years old?
Well, I'm 3 years old now. So I did see when I was playing hide and seek, I felt like there was somebody in the shower, but it was a dark shadow. So I had perceptions. So I think I was always open, but it really jacked up after the nail went in my head. I've had a lot of issues around the head area. And I think that, your crown chakra really opened me up. I didn't plan that, but I would get whole conversations from these people and they would talk to me. Some would be friendly, most needed help. Sometimes there would be darker ones. I would sleep with the covers over me. I mean, I had no one to talk to about this. It was, disconcerting. Like, who are these people? And they were considered ghosts.
Right. Now, the ones that you say needed help, with your knowledge that you have now, would they be considered earthbound spirits, or is that something else?
As far as the term goes, as we know it, probably yes. And I don't think they're bound because they did anything. I think they're confused. And the way I see that now, it would be like if you saw a person, right? And you probably can think of someone, and people listening can think of someone that's confused, that has issues in life. Okay, now this person, say they're troubled, and now they drop their body, they're still confused. So I think that people that are in the lower states here, that's why when you work on your spirituality here, it all works toward, your growth level once you cross over. I mean, it's you don't lose that part of anything, but I think that they had confusion. They would come and complain about stuff, about how they died, especially if it was a trauma. Occasionally they'll do that. They don't do that much these days because I do this professionally and that I don't attract the lower ones. Not, there are people that do that, that do rescue for that. I do enough counseling in session with people and their regular loved ones that have crossed over. But I did have a lady come through to me, strangely, we mentioned this 3 days ago. And she had just died, and she died of cancer, and she was showing me in my astral state what her apartment looked like and all the medicine she had to take. And I said, "Did you have cancer?" And she said, "Shh, we don't say that word." And she wanted me to thank Cody for helping her with her sickness and so forth. I said, I'm sorry, I don't know who he is. If you can have him get in touch with me, I'll talk to him. But so I think that a lot of these people are in confusion, but they do receive help, but they realize people like me that can see them, our energy is different. And so they just kind of gravitate toward us.
Right. And when you speak about energy, your mediumistic skills, but it seemed like that was a natural progression for you because you've had these experiences since you were 3 years old. What were the more formative events before you started practicing as a medium? Were there more NDEs or did they occur later?
Oh, no, I had one. I had 3 in a row, the prenatal, and had 3, 4, 5, 3, the nail. 4 was a car wreck where I went through the windshield, and then I was by location and saw different things. And then 5 was when I died of pneumonia. I had 15 minutes. I was dead on arrival. They clocked me in it, and then I was dead on and off 2 hours, and they couldn't get a pulse, and they would get a pulse, and then it would go away. And then eventually they covered me with a sheet, which was a bit sad. And then they did see a slight pulse, and they put me in this plastic tent thing in a room. It's strange because I actually, in a nice way, but confronted my mother about this thing because no one ever told me. And I remembered it all. And she's like, didn't want to talk about it because they didn't get me to the hospital in time. They just kept waiting. And so sometimes parents, if it's children, they don't want you to remember things because maybe there's a mistake in there that they did that they could have, they feel bad about. They don't want to talk about it. And I told her, it's fine. But that one, because I was spirit for so long, that I think that they like me now because they trust me because I was spirit, and so they can see I'm different. But that was a big one. And then I had one at 10. It was a drowning on a family vacation at Myrtle Beach. And then I had a reaction to a pill when I was 34. And it was just a prescribed pill for menstrual migraines. And it just had a weird effect on me. And I went out of body into the galaxy, didn't know my name. I was male or female. And I just left, saw this whole world decoded into lines, which makes me realize that, we are kind of in a holographic universe. We are kind of in a matrix. And there's so much detail to each. So I don't know how much you want me to go into that or the after effects, but it's a lot, especially for a little kid to try to process this. So I couldn't really process a lot of this till later on. And I didn't think it was safe to mention it to, my family. They weren't really that supportive. They had a lot of arguing in the family, a lot of problems there, sexual abuse from my stepdad. So it wasn't really a safe place to discuss anything. So I had to wait till much later.
And that's actually pretty common for people that do experience them. The near-death experience, the average time from when it occurred to the disclosure, pretty sure it's about 10 years. And for some people, it could be even longer. What are the most important things that you learned about the spirit world or anything else that really just comes to mind first about the experience that we should know about?
Well, first of all, we are them. We are spirits, number one. So people that are afraid of them, won't go look in the mirror and be afraid of yourself. Because chances are when we sleep, most of us do not stay in the body the whole time because we're very nosy. We're very busy. And so we wake up thinking they're dreams, but some of them aren't. And we're going places. So we actually connect with our loved ones in spirit, not the ghost ones, but the ones that like, I got it. I'm on the other side. I'm at peace. Those people, we connect with them in dreams so they can safely communicate things with us. But we are them, and we're just having a human experience right now. And it's challenging being here. I think that there are different dimensions and levels in the spirit world. And I think that it's not because of punishment, okay? It's not because of punishment at all. It's because there's different levels of consciousness. So we go to the level of the consciousness that we are at. And it's what, as Jesus explained it to me, it's like going to a holiday party, let's say, and you gravitate to a certain kind of people and you're like, have a great time, you talk, you're like, wow, they were really kind of fun. It's because your tone level, your frequency level went to those. That's how it is on the other side. You go to the area that you vibrate, that your frequency is. That's why it's important in this world to stay away from negative people because they'll lower your tone level. And they'll either make you sad or pissed off. And you don't want to be like that because you can't think straight. You want to be in a pleasant, controlled manner. So you want to be with people that raise you up in your energy and you raise them up so you can attract more high vibe people. But that's the same thing in the spirit world. And the spirit people communicate differently to me as I know it now. If you want to know a little bit more about them, they communicate differently than we do. They communicate sometimes in symbols. We don't really talk in symbols, right? We don't go, hey, let me show you this, unless it's a secret code or when you're a little kid, some people talk in pig Latin or silly things, but we don't. We just talk literally. They talk in code. They can also mean more than one thing. So an example might be, there was a lady that I was reading many, many years ago, and I went to her house, and her brother was coming through, and a lot of information, a lot of love, and he started talking about the roses outside, and she goes, oh, well, we planted those from his house, which I thought was kind of neat, and she goes, but then I said, no, that's when I first started realizing that they talk in multiples. Then he talked about there's another Rose. They'll tell me now how many roses. And you go, oh, well, my nickname was Rose. Okay, that's the second Rose. And then they'll say then they'll mention like another Rose. Oh, he'll say, oh, I just got a necklace from my husband for my birthday. There's a rose. So they're acknowledging the birthday. So that was 3 roses. So they can talk. We don't talk like that. when we say something, we usually mean one thing, not three or four things. So I have to tell people, think bigger, just kind of be really open. And I've always been this way as a kid, but I decided later on in life, which I didn't plan on doing this, if I'm going to do this, I'll go get training. So I thought, well, let me give it a shot. And I ended up training, long story short, 8 years in the British Isle of Mediumship with the UK's Tony Stockwell, who's fabulous, and certified with Lisa William, trained with John Holland. And Janet Novak, who has now passed about a year ago, she was a nun that was also a medium, former nun. They both have books and stuff, but I learned a lot. And one of the things, though, in Tony's class, we did for 7 days, and it was just delightful, and it was just wonderful, and I just loved it, is the whole week we brought through evidentially what people were doing, your loved ones in heaven now. And it was just cool. So they do stuff there.
Really?
Yeah, I know. It's just cool.
That's very cool. Yeah, I like that.
Like, they don't really hunt, but they go around searching for animals. So they don't really hunt. That's their hunting. But they do stuff kind of like they did here. Like, I'll give you a teeny, really unusual example. There was a lady that I was talking to. I said, yeah, your uncle here, he's an educated man, and he wants to talk about your nails. And I just thought it was odd. And she said, yeah. And so she said, oh, well, he was a skin and nail doctor. So he always looked at our nails for healthiness, for medical purposes. And he started talking about the father, and he always took care of him, even though he was the youngest. She goes, yeah. And I said, they're both over there. She goes, yeah. And he's now, because he was so busy with his work as a doctor and taking care of her daddy and family, that he didn't really get to have a lot of time off. So what he's doing now is he's studying tectonic plates of the land. And she said he always wanted to do that. And he's had like a little liquor glass to the side, but they don't really drink. But that was something he did in life. So it made him feel comfortable to, like, not that they're drinking alcohol, they're not. But that's part of our human self. They talk about food a lot over there. They'll like mock up food. Like, today we're making, banana pudding. But I would get recipes from people from different cultures. And it's because you think, why would they do that? Well, they're us. They were human. I mean, don't you think about the time you had some really good chocolate cake and you go, that was so good, and you still reminisce about it? So
you're saying they do not eat?
They don't need to eat. They can mock that up, but they're more like, you remember the old times? It's kind of like you with a friend. Remember that time we were at that restaurant? Man, that was some good food. That's what they love to do, because they don't eat grease and things like this in heaven. So it's like a fond memory.
Right. So a question, since we're talking about our loved ones, because I think it's very cool that you are able to bring through what you call something which is evidential. You also mentioned something about dreams, that when we dream of our loved ones that have passed, it's your opinion that more often than not, that's actually them in their way of saying, I'm okay.
Absolutely. Well, it's a way that's not invasive, right? And it's more gentle. I mean, if they showed up at the door glowing at the foot of your bed, it might be a little off-putting. So they try to do it in sweet, gentle ways. My grandmother one time showed up to me in my dream, and we were at a cafeteria getting food and sitting down. I said, why are we here? She goes, I thought this would be a good place to talk, because she loved that place. She was so amazed at all the food, because she came from the Depression. So she loved the cafeteria. So she wanted to be in, that was the environment she picked for us to talk.
Okay. You also mentioned something you learned from Jesus. You apparently had some very high level experiences through different layers or frequencies of the spirit world. How did that happen? And when did that take place in the framework of your NDEs, your near-death experiences?
Well, good question. My experiences with Jesus on a spiritual, supernatural level. Yeah, because they're not your typical Jesus type things like you would find at church. When I was, my NDE, when I was the one that was for the car crash, and it was snowing and icing. My mom took me on a date with this guy she was interested in. Eventually she married and he adopted me, but we hit the tree. They were arguing, and he slammed the brakes, and we hit this tree, and I went up through the windshield. And when I did, on instant impact, I didn't feel the impact. I was just I didn't know it at the time, but I was propelled out of my body. I didn't feel any pain, but it was instant. I was gone, and I was in this all blackness, and I was confused because I didn't understand where I was. I didn't understand where my feet or hands were. That's funny, but think about it. If you were in all black and you couldn't see yourself, it's so black you can't see yourself, it would be confusing. And then I started thinking, where am I? And then I saw like a pin light. It was the sensation of a tunnel. I mean, it could have been a portal. I don't know, but it just felt like the sensation of that. And then at the end, there was a figure, and as I got closer, I saw it was Jesus, and he had people behind him, but he was very flowy, like a fan was on his hair, going back. And he told me I had to go back, and I told him I didn't want to because it's really hard here. And he's like, no, he said, you can and you will. I mean, he was like serious. He was like, you can and you will. But then he softened it up by saying, but I'll always be around. And I was like trying to soften the blow. So as soon as he said that, I'm back. And I'm back in the situation. I'm seeing these guys try to take the passenger, not the passenger, the driver's side of the car was wrapped around the tree. So they're trying to pull that out. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the rip in the universe. It looks like a God portal. It looks like, it's not fire, but it's just this brilliant yellow and fiery looking thing, but not scary. It was just like amazing. It was like a creation. I saw that same angel again, orangey gold. Then I'm seeing different time periods in front of me, which can't happen because it's frozen. Why would I see Native American Indians cooking fish over fire, holding a baby? It's like freezing cold and frozen over ground. And then I saw firemen in different costumes, different time periods, and people from different things. So I saw him then with a tunnel. And then the next year is when I had the big one that I spent time with him. And I haven't left spending time with him since then. And that was when I was 5 and I died of pneumonia. And I got very sick. And my parents didn't take me to the doctor. Day went by, I got sicker. And then my fever got up to 103.9. And then my mom was saying to my stepdad, we've got to take her to the hospital. And he's like, no, we don't have the money. So we didn't go. So she called the hospital. They said, put me in ice to lower my temperature, which when you have a fever, you're usually freezing, right? So I was cold. So when she put me in that ice, even though my fever was high, it was awful. And then she, cleaned me off. She tried to feed me, didn't work because my lungs were shutting down. She didn't know that, but she put me in the bed. Within an hour, I was drenched. So she picked me up. She goes, we got to go to the hospital. And it was a radio station car. He worked at WKIX in Raleigh. And so we got into the car. She was holding me. He was driving. That night happened to be the exact night, if you want to know what night it was, when Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. And we're in the South. We're in Raleigh, North Carolina. So it was National Guard. Like, you could not go out. And so, but we had to. It was a medical emergency. So we're out on the way. My breathing became more shallow. I died on the way. It didn't feel like it. I didn't know I was dead. I mean, I'm still conscious. I just sort of drifted away, and I'm just above the car, probably 100 feet, just kind of following along. And I'm seeing the fires in the background. And then we come to one of those National Guard stands where they had MP and all that on. And they asked, what are we doing? He said, this is my daughter. We got to get her, to the doctor. So they actually called ahead and let us go through. And so they were waiting for me at the hospital. But at that point, I was seeing everything from an exterior point of view, including even going into the hospital and what they did. I wasn't just on the ceiling. I was kind of everywhere. I got bored. I would see what they were doing. I would see them pump like goop out of my lungs. And then I would go, oh, that's gross. And I'd leave the room and zoom around the hospital. So eventually, they kept back and forth for a couple hours. They told my mom they were trying to stabilize my vitals, but she didn't know what that meant. She just didn't. And then eventually, after struggling so much, and I remember there were 2 male doctors and there were other people in there, but one of the male doctors said, I have a little girl her age. And some of the nurses were crying, which is not good. And then they covered me with a sheet. at some point between that room and the morgue, they saw a breath, and they brought the doctors, and then I got put on a breathing tent and a breathing tube, which I didn't, I remember this, and no one ever told me. So I talked to my mom about it, and she's like, yes, how do you know that? They try to hide it. I guess it was a bad time. If you have a kid and you figure they died, you just don't say anything, let's forget all about it. So, but during that time, I went back to the body and I saw two spirit people. But they look in a spirit form, but one was a woman, one was a man, and she was a nun and he was a priest. I could tell they were Catholic because they had rosaries. And the woman said, "Blessed is the innocent." And they were praying over me. Later on, I find out that used to be the older hospital that was built there was Rex Hospital was a Catholic run hospital. And so at that point, everything in an instant went, and I'm in like this field. It's so pretty. And Jesus is kneeling beside me, and I know it's him. He's really glowy. He's got this light coming out of his chest. He's smiling. He's beautiful teeth, so happy and joyful. And there's kids playing on a roundabout to the left. It looks like a beautiful sunny park day. It just looks so pretty. The colors are amazing. And he's on one knee, and he's holding my hand. And he's smiling. I said, "You're that man I talked to." And he goes, "I am." And he's like so friendly. And he goes, "I have something for you." And I said, "A toy?" Because I'm 5. And he goes, "No." And he thought that was funny. And then he said, and he pulled a piece of his rope belt off. And it kind of looked like a friendship bracelet, like it was tethered. It wasn't very fancy. And he says, "I wrap you in my love, protection, and wisdom. Much is given, much shall give. Through the big things, the small things will be accomplished. And through the small things, the big things would be done." And then he said, "You have to go back. You have things to do." And I said, "Nope, they're here." I'm pointing to the other kids. I'm like, "They're here. I don't need to go back." And so I did little kid stuff, jumping around, trying not to go back. No. And so he said, "All right, let's walk some, and you can ask me things, but then you have to go back." So I spent 3 days in heaven with him. Of course, in reality, I don't know how long it was. It felt much longer. And as he walked, I could see the blade of grass, the flowers, everything follow him, the clouds. And then we went to this big tree. It was very pretty. Looked like a kind of between a dogwood or a cherry blossom, but it was the flowers on the trees, but it had little red grapes on it. They're little. And then there was a rock, and he said, "Well, we'll sit here a minute." And I looked at the tree. He goes, "Yeah, we don't eat from that tree. That's a wise tree." And I was like, "Okay." And I thought that was interesting. He said that. I think now that was what people consider the tree life, but I knew I couldn't go past that. And so we sat there, and he said, "What do you want to know?" But then I asked really silly kid-like stuff, like your kid. What are you going to ask? How's energy made? Things like that. And then I said, "How fast can I run? Can I run fast here?" I just asked, it wasn't like I was going to ask quantum physics stuff at 5 years old. And then he started talking, and he said, "Well, in this place, things are done very quickly. If we think it's done." I went, "Oh, wow, that's so cool. I want to do that." And so then I thought of us being in a little boat. We were in a little boat on like a little river. And then he saw 3 fish. They swam up to him, picked one up, said, "Hey," put it back. He said, "This is how we fish here." And then we go back to the scene of where we were. He said, "On the earth where you came from, it's the same thing, but it takes a lot longer to manifest. You have to keep thinking that thought. So you want to be really mindful of what you think to make sure that you get the right things. And so it's good to be positive." I said, "Okay." Then he told me how to come back. He told me that he wanted to show my mother love because I had more love in me than she had for both of us. And I told him I wasn't sure how to do that. He said, "Well, there's no right way or wrong way to show love." He said, "That's something I know about." I thought that's kind of funny. And then I didn't realize that, later on what a hard lesson that would be, because I loved my mother, but she also knew that I was being sexually molested. So I had to love her despite that. And I know a lot of people go, "How can you do that?" Well, what's the options? Never talk to her again. She was a mile away. Or go, she made a really bad decision on that. That's between her and God. I'm just going to move on with my life and be grateful and forgive her and make the best of the time that's here. So, what am I going to do? Hate my mom forever? I mean, it's on her, right? And ultimately, she has to come to terms with that. But so that was a harder thing to deal with that he asked me to do. And then he said the mission was to show people love as an example and be a role model. And he told me on this thing that I was supposed to do to help change the world with love and all this. Anyway, I said, it's too much. I can't do all this. And he said, I said, I can't do it. You can't, and I argued again. And I said, I can't do this because there's other people like you doing this. You're not alone. There'll be people helping you. There are other people trying to help out. Okay. And I'm like, I don't know. So he convinced me because you have to say yes, free will. So as soon as I said yes, I was back. Eventually went back in my body, not right away, because I played angel for a while, helping people out in rooms. And then had a spirit doctor show up. He said, hi, I'm Dr. Tippin. He had like a little bald head, little bow tie. And he said, you need to get back in your body, little girl. I'm like, no, it's going to hurt. Not doing it. So Jesus showed up and said, you need to get in your body. And I went, he said, you just lay in it. And then you'll be in it. He said, just lay back in it. I said, no, it's going to hurt. He goes, I've taken care of that. And as soon as he said that, I was in there. So since then, I've heard him. I've seen him. He's very funny. He's very misunderstood. Okay. A lot of people, and I don't want to upset anyone that listens here.
You can say what's true. I don't really care if someone is upset. We want to know that the whole point of having this show is to get experiencers to talk about truth. And if that goes against the grain or the agenda of the church or anything else for that matter, that's not our problem. It's their problem, right?
Okay. Well, thank you for saying that. So he did not start the Christian religion. He thinks it's great that people like that. He really doesn't want people to worship him. He wants them to worship his father, as he calls it. And I know some people say mother, father. He says father, okay? Is that a synonym? It's bigger. It's really not a thing. Okay, I don't want to go into that, but that's what he calls it, okay? And you got to think, he worships God. He's thankful. He wants to help people. He wants to be a representative to you and be your friend, but he would rather people, pray to God. And he wants people to have a direct connection, and he doesn't want a middleman. You see how this might upset some people here?
Good question. Who is the middleman?
Probably the church, but it could be the government. It could be anything, but he doesn't want that. He wants direct. He doesn't care if you're a Hindu, blah, blah, blah. Plenty of Indians have been other religions. Again, Jesus is not a religion. He is an entity. I think he's like a God man because he was pretty important over there. But he's love. He is love. And he, I've had people like, I don't know him. I'm like, well, he still loves you. I mean, he loves the people that you would not even talk to, that they're like so despicable or mean. He just takes up for everybody, but he is very high and very ascended, but he's very forgiving, and he's so much more. This is my opinion. By knowing him, he's so much more than what the church says, and I think he keeps him small and keeps people small, and he wants you to go to direct. So that's why people go, oh, you channel Jesus. I'm like, honestly, he loves talking to everybody. He would love to talk to you. And you go, well, how can I hear? Well, you start with dreams, say you ask him stuff, and you go, and nothing is too small, okay? You just start talking to him, and then next thing you know, he loves to talk to people. I would much rather get it from him than the news, which I completely don't trust.
Well, yeah. The news, and especially what's going on today, is probably a topic for another day. Probably another show too, but we'll talk about that after the tape stops, because I've got some questions on that. But a couple of things just came up. God and the Father. Now, I know you can't really answer this fully, but since you did have this experience, who is or what is God? Is it source? Is it an energy source? What exactly is it?
Oh, wow. You wouldn't. Okay. Hardest question ever. Thanks, John. Oh my gosh. Well, wait, my mind is blown. Okay. So remember I was talking earlier about spirit people, how they can say one thing and it mean more than one thing. Why? Because they're multi-dimensional beings now, which is us, right?
Right. We are multi-dimensional beings, are we not?
Correct. And our body traps that, okay, because we forget going, oh, no, look, I'm flesh, right? We forget, but we are. So we can go to these astral states. We can go to these higher consciousness states. I hope, I really do, genuinely, that my life is an example channeling not only Jesus, but ultra-dimensionals and higher beings that love us and our relatives, whoever it is, that let people know you can do it too. Why? Because we're from heaven. Because it's their natural state. Nothing is truly holding you back. And people, if there's fear, it's just not real. And if there's something weird and fearful, you already know that in life, what that is. You just don't go there. And it's not grounded truly in fear. Now, God. Okay, so we know Jesus is multidimensional. He is. He showed us the transfiguration that you can do these things, right? And more. And more. What's the and more? That's what I want to know. But I think God is, I think that it is really, 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 really deep what you're asking. But I'm going to ask it. I'm going to answer it in a really kind of abstract kind of way. I feel like the consciousness of all of us put together, including, this is heavy, including other planets, including other realms, but everything this life that has been, it's God. It's in all of us. It's everything that's been. And it's personal, but it's also God is creating these holographic experiences for our Earth school here so we can be able to learn from it and understand. But we're right now pretending, what about if you, example, what about if you played multiple lives football every life and you always won and you were like a star athlete? Okay, now you come back to Earth. The only way that could be exciting again is if you forgot. So we're here. We forgot that we're a pretty big deal. We forgot our mission too, which is to love. As Jesus tells me, the job here is to be the love you're created to be. And he means that with everything. So it's not exactly easy. It sounds easy, not exactly easy. Not easy. I mean, that's being love, even when there's the cabal and Illuminati and Satanists and people trying to kill you and people trying to trick you. All that still be the love.
And politicians.
All that crooked crap, all that manipulating us, trying to turn us into slave planet, all that still being the love. It's just not easy. So he didn't say that lightly. I think God is all of that. And God, I think that it's almost like a sum total neutral. We have to experience on Earth some. Now I'm starting to sound like a Buddhist. I'm really Team God. I'm just, don't play for a particular team. I said Team God. But Buddhists do say you have to have some duality, otherwise you don't learn.
Right. I've heard that not a million times, but probably close to 100 times since I started the show. You
got to have a little bit. But what happens with people, if you notice that the balance gets too much, like, okay, they lied to us, they're trying to kill us, they're trying to poison us, now what are they doing to the food? What about the GMO? Then at some point, regular people start going, what in the heck is going on? And so the balance is off. Like, okay, this is beyond learning. The balance is off. So I think we're recalibrating that balance. But we are interwoven. We're that seed of life. We are intertwined with, some people call it God molecule, but source, the source of all things, mountains, plants, inside the aliens, even the crappy aliens, the ones that, they got a weird agenda, all of it. Okay. And you think, why? Well, there's also free will. There is. Did you notice Jesus we had to go back and forth till I agreed, because it's free will. It was free will. So even when people make bad decisions, or even really dark, evil ones. Let's say they're a killer, right? Okay, a really bad killer, right? That's a decision. I feel like Jesus is the man, so we can connect to someone that he can intercede, because he's serious. He totally is 100% serious about like making everyone come clean, because he knows this is a difficult world and he knows people make bad decisions. So good news, redemption for everybody. We should hold a party. But for the people that live here, it's difficult. But I think we are part of God. It's like when you look in someone's eye, you're looking into the eye of God. Therefore, you should love your neighbor.
That also recalls the principle of oneness. And I know that's tied into that whole concept anyway. And you're right, it's not an easy thing to try to explain, but I think you did a pretty good job. Speaking of free will, before I forget, a woman I'm going to interview fairly soon wrote a really interesting book. And one of the things that she remembers, the in-between space, which we haven't really talked about. When she got to that space, she was really struggling with the choices she made. When she could have made the spiritual choice, she often made the practical choice. And I guess in some, it's supposed to be a balance, but some people, I think, when they're faced with, they could take the high road or the low road. If they take the low road, eventually when they get to that place, there's going to be some regret. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's why I have compassion for people. And I know that in our earth body and the emotions and so forth, we want to be better than our emotions. We want to be conscious beings that when we get mad, we need to know, okay, I'm mad. That's not helping me. That's not helping them. I need to calm myself down and then decide what is a good decision. And I feel like that we are conscious beings, and if we put our consciousness on higher level vibrational stuff and love, like that manifestation Jesus talked about, we could literally manifest. We can change things. Things are not set in stone. And a lot of people they have had it. They have had it. They are sick of it. They're seeing through, the Wizard or the Wizard of Oz. They are seeing there's a little mean man behind that screen. They're done with it. And that's actually positive, because people are starting to take spiritual responsibility for where they are and make better decisions. And they're more open to things and who they are. I always say the greatest journey you'll ever have is the journey of yourself.
Okay. This talk has definitely triggered several issues, which we're not going to be able to get to tonight. But we didn't even get to the channeling, which I think is very, very important. But I do believe we'll have to talk about that next time. So.
Oh, I love the channeling. And can I say this? Everyone is channeling, whether they know it or not.
And we'll definitely get into that. To be continued. Tamara, thanks for coming on to the show tonight. How can our listeners find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go on YouTube, the Seeking Heaven channel, and I do free spiritual lessons and so forth on there, as well as if they want a private evidential or life path reading with me, they can go to southernbellemedium.com. I would love to be able to connect with people in those ways if they want to look into any of those. And I appreciate so much today and what you're doing. You're one of those spiritual renegades, and I'm right there with you, brother.
Yeah, I like that. Thanks. I definitely appreciate it. You've been listening to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. You can find more info and episodes on closertovenus.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.